Okay, so we're recording now, Damodar. Just want to make sure my volume is up, and we're going to record everything that we go through, roughly speaking, over the next half an hour. Good luck for tomorrow. So let's start off with really one of the first areas that we touched on, and what we were talking about in this first area was really a question that required us to categorize stakeholders. Yeah, categorize. Yeah, so we're in the area of Mendeley. Yeah, the matrix. But before we get to the matrix, I'm thinking of, could you categorize? Can you think of any categories? I mean, I'll give you an example. An example might be primary versus secondary, but that's not the one I want. The one that we had in the question was three-part. Any ideas? Not so much who they are, but what are those main categories? That's exact. Yeah. hmm that's it. Very, very good. Okay, so in addition to Mendeley, there's a number of ways in which we can manage stakeholders. We can manage conflict, and I think you know what the question is going to be. I'd like the theorists. There's two of them, and they've got a sort of a four-pronged attack, or four ideas for us. Who's the theorist, and what are the ideas? Okay. Yeah, no, Mendeley is okay. I was thinking, yeah, yeah, yes. Okay, and what do they say? Okay, that's good. Thank you for that. Okay, there's an area. Yes, yes, exactly. Okay, in terms of prioritization, what do you think that means? I mean, that basically means what it says on the tin, I think. Prioritization means what exactly? hmm yeah, I guess in a way it's sort of who's the most important. Yeah, yeah, who's the most important, and they're the ones that are going to get the most attention. Really, that's the key thing. Okay, define mission. hmm hmm Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's quite an unusual way to come at a mission statement to say, well, here's what you should include it. Include everything. That's going to be a very, very long mission statement. And normally they're quite short. When I've seen them within the E3 syllabus, it's probably been a long sentence that says something like, "We're going to maximize profit for our shareholders, and we're going to be good corporate citizens," or some. Yeah, exactly. And what's the difference between that and a vision? And like their preferred future. Okay. And yeah, exactly. But it's nice to have some dreams, isn't it? It's nice to have dreams like that and sort of drives them. And perhaps it's motivating for employees as well, to have a clearly stated mission and a clearly stated vision. Yeah, I think it probably is. Just one thing, just a question. I'm not so sure how much time we've spent on this, Demona, but there is another theorist in the area of mission. Yeah, he doesn't use the word purpose. Yeah, he uses a slightly different word. Same sort of thing. This is not overly important. I'm just wondering if he's connected with the emergent strategy. He's Yeah, Mintzberg. Can you remember the word that he uses in relation to mission? Function. Function. Yeah, he talks about function. I prefer purpose. Yeah, I think purpose is a little, function is a little bit sort of, I don't know. I don't know if it sums it up for. I think so. Okay. Damodar, I want you to spend just about 30 seconds, and I'll give you 15 seconds to prepare for this. I want you to spend 30 seconds talking to me about change. Yeah, about change. Anything at all. I don't care what it is, but you only have 30 seconds, so you probably need to do it fairly quickly. So if I'm going to give you just 15 seconds to prepare yourself, yeah, and then I'm going to say 15 seconds are up, just fire away. I'm going to count on my screen the 15 seconds. So you've got 15 seconds to prepare, and then a 30-second presentation. Okay, I'll let you know when to start. Okay, go. 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's certainly true. What about any individuals that could be appointed in respect of. And but I guess the only problem is that given what Jarrett says, is that obviously there will be a cost attached to employing a third party consultant to assist with change, and it may well be that the benefits aren't wholly realized. So it's there's a potentially costly area. Just one other point on change. Well, just one other point on change. There was another phrase that we saw in a question that I believe it was yesterday, and it related to a company that was, I believe, introducing a slightly different organizational structure or planning to, yeah, because of changes in their in the environment. And they talked about a different phrase. They were going to appoint someone in-house champion. Yeah, exactly, a champion of change. That's to be a nice word to use. I quite like that. Okay, what about this idea of some sort of stage process, a three-stage or three-step process to. Okay. Coulter and Schlesinger. Yeah, yeah, for certain, for certain. I mean, yeah, ex- ex- yeah, any way that we can bring in any theorists, I think, is a good idea. Okay, that's good. I'm quite happy with that. Just one point, just as regards the sort of refreeze at the end. What's the word that we're looking for that's sort of consolidation? You're always going to see that word, Demoda, in any answer on Lewin or on refreezing. You're going to see the word consolidation. That's really what it is, making sure it happens. The analogy that we used is someone going to the gym on January 1st, stopping on January 21st. Yeah, because they haven't consolidated the change. They got motivated, they made the change, everything was going to be okay, but they didn't realize they needed to consolidate. Okay, SEMA's code of ethics. Yeah, take me through it. What are the main points? Mm-hmm. Okay. In relation to confidentiality, we did a question about 3 weeks ago. Yeah, 4 weeks ago, and it was quite a good question. And in fact, I think we did it twice. I think we did it. We came back to it again because I quite liked it. Now, just in relation to this issue of confidentiality, I mean, I'm fully conversant with the meaning of confidentiality, and I appreciate, as a professional advisor and also as a member of various institutes, the need to be confidential. But in that question, I don't know if you remember, but in that question, there was a sort of an override, an over what exactly. Well, that's Demoda, Demoda. That's very well remembered. Well done. Very well remembered. Okay. Just one or two other points. Now we're going to come on to some models. Yeah. And what I'd like you to do, in the main, I think, is just give me perhaps some definitions and some details. I'm not going to focus on, the individual areas of each model. I'm going to focus outside of those because I think you know them reasonably well. Um, I want to just quickly talk about Porter's diamond. Yeah, and just the idea of something sort of under the banner of factor conditions. Factor conditions. Can you give me an example of factor conditions? Mm-hmm. Mm, mm, Okay. And the two extra points there under Porter's diamond, the two extra points. And chance events, which is basically just luck. Yeah, it's just luck, which is fair enough, really. Okay. In relation to Porter's five forces, yeah, we talk about competitive rivalry. We talk about threat of entrance. Do remember when we did that question that in the first instance, in fact, that was a written question that you did for me, and you did it online. In other words, you weren't expecting it. You emailed it through to me. When you listed, yeah, each of the 5 points, I know that you were under pretty serious time pressure, but you didn't list out the full line that I wanted. What did you miss out? Can you remember? For example, with supplier. Yes. Yeah, yeah. And then with suppliers and customers, you missed out the word bargaining. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So let's make sure that we're specific. Yeah. Let's be very specific because that's how we're going to score marks, Demoda. Yeah. Okay, that's good. I'm happy with that. Okay, let's move on a little bit and talk about an area that is very, very popular at E3, and it's CSR. CSR. Can you give me a really good definition of CSR? A good definition. Yeah, and the environment, I guess, as well. Yeah. Okay, good. In terms of pest, yeah, I mean, that relates to the environment, obviously. And there are, as we know, several areas of pests. Well, four main ones, and we could add a few more in. But I mean, what would be your definition, yeah, of what pest is or what it can be used for? And really analyzing the external environment, the macro environment. Yeah, that's true. And one phrase that we use quite regularly when we use pest is environmental scanning. Environmental scanning, the idea that we scan the environment, and really what we're looking for through using pest is any sort of I don't know, drivers of change. What is driving change, and also, what are the sources of risk. Yeah, what are the risks that we see within the environment that are going to be relevant to us, or even opportunities and threats as well? They're also important, clearly. Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, let's move on a little bit. Um, right, we've got a set of theorists that are very, very important within E3, and indeed across all the E stream. Johnson, Scholes, and Whittington. Johnson, Scholes, and Whittington. Tell me a little bit about Johnson, Scholes, and Whittington. Mhm. Okay, good, good. What happens, just as a matter of interest, after implementation? Isn't there a sort of a fourth one there? Sort of. So yeah. Well, I'm thinking, we're looking to, yeah, review and control. Yeah, because if we don't review and control, then we don't know how we're doing. Yeah, and then we go back again round to probably analysis, choice, and implementation. Now there are a few words, or what we've called buzzwords, buzz phrases, associated with this idea of this three-pronged analysis, choice, and implementation. Can you remember any of those words that Johnson and Scholes? Um, uh, yeah, so not linear, not in one line, interlinked and overlapped, and also that the idea that they have a sort of an equal weighting, an equal weighting. Yeah, so that's good, Damodar. Now, in terms of a definition of, let's say, we did a question on strategic implementation, the implementation, and in particular within that question, we were required sort of to define strategic implementation. Okay, I'm just wondering if you could. I'm just going to get a glass of water, Domino. My throat's slightly sore. I wonder if you could come up with a good definition of strategic implementation within about 30 seconds. I'm just going to get a glass of water if you think about that. Okay? Hi, Demeter. Yeah, yeah. So basically, a conversion of plans, and objectives into action. It's basically taking action in some way, shape, or form. Okay. CSFs. CSFs. Okay. What is your definition, your best definition, Demoda, of CSFs? Yeah, that's virtually verbatim, Demoda. That's virtually exactly uh, as it would be within a text. So that's very, very good. Okay. In terms of examples of CSFs, we've talked about probably three or four that we could. Yeah, quality is one. Hmm. Okay. Yeah, or maybe customer satisfaction. Yeah. Okay. Customer satisfaction. The specific question that we did, not that this is going to come up on Thursday, was in relation to a tuition body. Yeah. Now, with a tuition body, how would we gauge customer satisfaction in terms of a KPI? Pass rates, exactly. That's the one that I have. Good. Okay. Um, Environmental analysis. We talked about it in relation to one or two models. Do remember? I think that you'd said about using a SWOT as well for, environmental. Yeah, I mean that there is an element of that, obviously, with the opportunities and threats. But I want to talk just briefly about um, the benefits. The benefits of environmental analysis. Can you think of some benefits for me if I give you a few moments, or can you just talk off the cuff? Hmm. Mm, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, let me also let me run you through my benefits here. I have a list of them. I've got sort of awareness of in this particular question we were dealing with a company that was interested in different age groups. But what I've got here is awareness of aging society. Awareness of demographics, the changing needs of the population, helping the strategy formulation process, which you said, awareness of the sector generally, role of IT, in society, political priorities and possible funding issues. So we could talk and talk and talk on that. We just have to take that attitude that, okay, we're sitting down doing a pest analysis. Why are we doing this? Why are we bothering with this? Okay, here's some benefits, etc. Okay, now I have an issue here in relation to foresight. I think you're pretty good on that area because we've tested it a few times, so I'm not really going to bother with that. I'm going to move on to a couple of other areas. The first one is that it's a theorist, or in fact two theorists. I'm just wondering what you would talk to me about on these two guys. They are Kaplan and Norton. Kaplan and Norton. What are they? Why are they important? Okay, the definition of which is and to, yeah, and to achieve them, to achieve them. Exactly. Okay. And in terms of areas, Damodar, I might get a knock on the door at around about 1:45. I may not, but I might, just so that you know. It will just take me 30 seconds to deal with that. Okay. So in terms of the balance scorecard, we have a few areas within the scorecard. What are they? Hmm. Exactly. And you probably know what question I'm going to ask you next, which is I like the idea of the scorecard because, in essence, what we're saying with the balanced scorecard is that an individual company or a business has some issues in terms of measurement. Yeah. Perhaps performance measurement. It's not going well. Yeah. And they need to introduce something that's a little bit more wide ranging, a little bit more comprehensive and maybe easier to use. But there can be some drawbacks, yeah, and some difficulties of using the balanced scorecard. What are they? Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And the other thing that is more of a practical point that you and I would be familiar with is just this idea that we are used to one measure of performance. Yeah. Most likely, I mean, probably profit. Maybe some people would say ROCE, or we're used to the traditional measures. So using a different measure can be difficult. We could even bring in the point there. I know it's stretching it a bit. Is this the idea of changing to the balanced scorecard? That would be a nice question, wouldn't it? What are the difficulties, and how will that change prove difficult? So there's several ways that we could go with that. And it is a point that you've mentioned just now in terms of the drawbacks, but just to expand on that point in terms of congruency of measures. I noticed that when you say it, you say goal congruence, whereas in fact in the answer it was congruency of measures. Yeah. In other words, that each of the measures rather than goals. Yeah. Yeah, rather than goals. Although it is relevant, goal congruence is a very common theme in the East Stream and elsewhere. But just on that point is that with regard to congruency of measures, really what we're saying there is that it's quite difficult, as you pointed out, to satisfy perhaps the financial perspective and the customer perspective. Yeah, it can be difficult to do that for obvious reasons. Okay, that's good. Okay, let's move a little bit further on and let's talk about yeah, we touched on uh, we touched on CSR, yeah, and I just have a question for you on that. I'd like you to sort of perhaps outline for a listed company, yeah, what the possible benefits of a good CSR policy would be, and in particular, I'm wondering if you could give me any indices, yeah, that would be added to that list. So give me the obvious ones, and then can you give me any indices? Mm-hmm. 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 Well, exactly. So in other words, if we're scoring high, if we're a listed company, we're scoring high on those indices, we're going to become much more attractive to to ethical investors, and maybe to other investors as well. Maybe, yeah, and we need that for sure. So all in all, a good CSR policy has just very very many benefits. Hmm. Yeah, that's a really really good. It's always nice. Yeah, it's always nice to bring in stats. Yeah, they talk about this at T4. You'll see that when you move on to T4. Which is good. Okay, good. Okay, a suitable CSR policy, Demoda, a suitable policy. Now, every question is different, yeah, but there are one or two things that we could think about maybe that might work, maybe even two or three things. I'm wondering, can you think of, if you were to introduce a fantastic CSR policy? I'm sure that you have one already in some way, shape, or form. But in terms of introducing to an average business a CSR policy, are there any things that you would think about? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Okay. Good. And so what I've got those I've got the first three. In fact, bear with me 1 second, and I've just had some visitors. I'm just going to pause our recording. Is that okay? Just for apologies for this, Dimona. Bear with me. Okay, we're now resumed. Okay, so yeah, so I was slightly distracted there, Dimona, with someone coming in my door. So I've got waste, noise, and smell. I don't think we could. I don't think we can bring them out. Don't worry about it. I don't think we can bring them out on every question. But I think that they're the obvious ones that I would try and think of. Can I say something about disposal of waste? Can I say something about managing noise, even if it's not relevant in the scenario? And also, can I say something about smell in some way, shape, or form? Okay. Um, so let's move on now to Lewin. Yeah. Come ahead. Let's move on now to Lewin. Yeah. Now you mentioned him earlier on. What did we say about that? What did we say about him? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Tell me a little bit about the unfreezing. What does it mean? What does unfreezing mean? Okay. And there's some element of motivation there, isn't there? In other words, making it sort of in some way compelling. Yeah, the idea that they really should get off their backs and get involved in the change. I think if we don't do that, then you're really setting yourself up for a problem. You're setting yourself up. That's okay. That's okay. Are you okay? Yeah, so really you're setting yourself up for an issue there. We looked at the question yesterday, and one of the key points within it, I can't remember the exact detail, was communication between management and employees. I think it was in relation to the company that was switching the functional organizational strategy. Yeah. So communication is key in all of these areas. Okay. Let's move on from that now. It's a little bit more to get done before we finish off. Okay. Yeah. We talked about this area of IT. Yeah. And one of the ways of one of the areas that they do tend to test is, how would you introduce something? Yeah. And in a question that we dealt with, I believe that the issue was how to introduce an ISS, an information strategy system, into yeah a given entity. And can you remember any detail about that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So okay. Demodo, I like the way that you do that now. I've noticed that you do that in the session sometimes. I ask you a question about X, Y, Z, and you say, right, okay, I'm going to answer you in a moment, but let me just tell you about this as well. It's a very, very good sign. It means that your brain is thinking, yeah, I know that bit. I know what he's asking. I'll give him that in a minute, but I also want to give him this. It's a good sign. I'm smiling here when you do it. Okay, okay. For sure, for sure. Okay, so go, yeah, fire away. What's some sort of stage process to introduce ISS into an organization? Tell me. Mm-hmm. Mm, Yes, that's good. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And also within this, with you, yeah, you've got all of the main points you're talking about. I hear you saying all the good buzzwords. Just one that you didn't mention, which is not the end of the world, is that the board member would be sort of classified as the change agent. Yeah, the change agent. But you sort of said that anyway, because you said we need to appoint someone to take charge of this issue. You just didn't mention change agent. That was the first time that we saw change agent used from an internal perspective rather than an external third party consultant, etc., etc. Okay, good. That's good, Timoda. Well done on that. Okay, a couple of other things to do before we close up, and they are going to be. Can you bear with me 1 second, Damodar, because I've got so many notes on our sessions. It just goes on and on. Good. I just want to make sure that we cover the main things. In fact, what I'm going to move on to now is actually something that we've touched on a few times, which is Ansoff. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about Ansoff and why should I be bothered about Ansoff? Mm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, I just want to stop you just there. In terms of the way in which you might start a question on that, I don't know if you remember from our session yesterday when we looked at the answer. It didn't do the actual, the diagram. It just sort of put it on two lines. Can you remember what it was? What they did? They did a line that said Ansoff, etc., etc., and then they said, you know, something something. Do you remember? It was new products. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So basically, they just gave that line. That's good. That's good. Okay, so in terms of without going into each of the four areas, yeah, I mean, in our experience, we've only dealt with maybe what two questions on this, but in our experience of dealing with Ansoff within a given scenario, a typical E3 scenario, Demoda, there's broadly two extremes, isn't there? There's this idea. Well, you tell me do you know what I'm getting at? The extremes are really linked in to the element of risk involved in each of the two. What am I talking about? Mm, versus exactly, exactly. That's what they tend to do that. I'm not saying it answers every single question, but we tend to have some sort of issue with, either we need to penetrate further or definitely, well, diversification is a possibility, but don't do that because it's really, really risky. Yeah. And but we also had one yesterday, sorry, the question we had yesterday that talked about this idea of market development. What is that? Yeah, and you could be a new geographical. Yeah, exactly. And that is something that that's an option that is there for companies because they may have saturation in their home markets. So yeah, that's always an option. Just a matter of interest, not important if you don't get this, Demoda, but when we talked about product development, yeah. So in other words, the idea of perhaps a new product or service in an existing market, we talked about something called early mover advantage. What does that mean? Early mover advantage. It's just yeah, it's something to do with the fact that if it's a new product, yeah, and it is a goer, as it were. If we got in early, if we got in early into the market, then we would have early mover advantage. Yeah, I've not seen that in any text. I don't think I've seen that phrase, but it was in the answer, and I always tend to remember things that are unusual. I don't know if it's the way my mind works. I like to circle or highlight things that are a little bit unusual. An early mover advantage, I quite like that. I like that. Okay, good. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to close down there. I'm going to turn off the recording, but thank you for your efforts. We've got the recording is a little bit longer than I'd planned. It's 40 minutes. Yeah, it's 40 minutes. Let me just deal with this 1 second.